Hello Year 11 and welcome to this walking talking mock on an inspector calls. The first question on paper 2 of the AQA GCSE English Literature exam. And just to clarify, walking and talking means that we will be walking you through and talking you through the exam question, how best to answer it, techniques and timings to help you. Importantly, only the teachers will be walking and talking. You need to remember that normal exam rules still apply. So before you start, please make sure that you have a pen and preferably a highlighter to hand, or at least another coloured pen that you can underline with. You will need to enter your details, so make sure your name is clearly on the front cover of the exam paper. And you need to write down your start time. You need to make sure you do this in the actual exam, which will either be on the board or look at the clock. But check you write down the start time and add your timings. You have 45 minutes to complete the inspector calls question, but obviously it's a long exam, 2 hours 15 altogether, so you do need to be organised and ensure that you've got clear timings. Now this is an example, clearly you're not starting at 9 o'clock, but if you were, you would write that down and then add 10 minutes on for your planning time. So if you start at 9, you will allow 10 minutes to plan and start writing your actual answer at 10 past 9. In the mock itself, you don't need to do this now, but normally you would also write down section B and your start time, which would obviously be 45 minutes after you start section A, and that's for the power and conflict cluster poetry. And finally, you'd write down your start times for section C, which is the unseen poetry, and ultimately your finish time, so that you clearly know how long to spend on each question. So check now that you have all those things and that you've written your details down and your start and finish time. You can now turn over and have a look at the question. Now for an inspector calls, you do not have an excerpt from the text to start with, so you have 2 questions to choose from. Now this is really important, don't forget you must choose one, do not attempt to answer both of them. Now for the purposes of this mock, we are going to focus on question 1. Obviously you would spend some time reading through both questions and deciding which to answer, but keep that to a minimum. And importantly, once you've chosen and made your mind up, stick with that and answer that question. Now you want to begin by highlighting keywords that are in the question so that you focus on those in your answer. Now importantly, so have your highlighter ready now. Arthur Burling is an appalling character with no redeeming features. How far do you agree with this statement? Write about what Arthur Burling says and does in the play, how Priestley presents the character of Arthur Burling. So use your highlighter now. Obviously this is a character question, so you want to highlight Arthur Burling as his name. Obviously he is the person you are going to focus your answer on. It suggests here that he is an appalling character, so obviously a horrible, unpleasant character, with no redeeming features, as in he has nothing about him which you could suggest is good in any way or makes up for the fact that he is an unpleasant character. And it asks you, how far do you agree with this statement? And that's really important to note here. This question is asking for your opinion. How much do you agree with that statement? So you have to ensure that you answer that in the question, in your answer. You need to talk about what Arthur Burling says and does, and also how Priestley presents the character of Arthur Burling. So what methods, what techniques does he use? How does he present this character to the audience? You get 30 marks for this, for answering this question. And importantly, in this one, you actually get 4 marks as well for your spelling, your punctuation and your grammar, which is why we are going to allow time at the end to ensure you check and make sure that you have your spelling and so on accurate. You can now begin to plan. And some of you aren't doing this at the moment, so you really need to spend up to a maximum of 10 minutes planning out your answer. This is extremely important. Start by writing down the keywords or the question And you can do this on the exam paper or on the question paper, but if you do it on the exam paper, you may be given credit for some of your ideas, even if you don't finish all of them. So write down the key words there or the question. You're going to do this as a mind map. You can start with a short introduction. You want at least 3 paragraphs. So point, evidence, explain, detailed paragraphs and a conclusion. Some of you may want to do more than 3 paragraphs, but your minimum is really 3. Now, the introduction is optional. So a short introduction which sums up the answer to the question with lots of references to keywords in the question. People can waste time with that introduction, waffle, and not really answer the question. So be warned, keep it short if you're going to use one, and ensure you refer to the question as much as possible. Don't use full sentences in your planning. You want to bullet point your ideas. You won't have time to write out whole sentences. So if you start off by planning out ideas, this is the kind of structure for each paragraph that you want to follow. Make a clear point in answer to the question, and then add questions that are relevant to that question, quotations, and refer to devices and methods that you're going to use. You can zoom in and analyse 1 or 2 words, or the methods and devices themselves, the terminology that the writer is using. And it's important to remember in a play, character themselves can be a device on their own. Comment on the effect on the audience and the context, so the background as well, so things like the time in which it was written, very important in this play, and also the influences and the ideas of the writer, Priestley in this case obviously, and their ideas, what they're trying to achieve with this play. You can then go around and put in your other paragraphs, up to 5 altogether paragraphs. Use words here, so discourse markers obviously, to plan out and highlight what you're doing with each particular paragraph. And finally, you can jot down ideas for a short conclusion. Now, your conclusion can be just a sentence. It doesn't have to be long, again, similar to the introduction. I think with this type of question, it's worth doing a conclusion to summarise your views on that statement. How far do you agree? So ensure in your conclusion you make a comment clearly, explicitly explaining how far you agree with the statement, so that you are linking back to the question. Now, here's some ideas for your introduction if you're going to do one, and I've written a selection largely of adjectives here that I would use to describe it. Now, I would suggest I would largely agree with the statement that Arthur Burling is an appalling character with no redeeming features. Obviously, there may be some aspects you feel that are redeeming about him, and it will be up to you to make the case for that argument. And there are some suggestions here for paragraph 1 as well, and as you can see, I've included some quotations, some methods and devices that Priestley uses, how it might affect the audience, and suggestions for context. But they are very short bullet point notes. You won't have time to write more than that in your planning. You can now begin your planning. So you have 10 minutes in order to plan out your answer. You may wish now to pause this and allow students 10 minutes in which to plan. You should now have finished your planning and be ready to start writing your answer. So beginning either with your introduction or your very first paragraph, you can make a start now, and you have 5 minutes to write your first paragraph. Begin now. You should now have completed your first paragraph and be ready to start your second paragraph. Ensure at this point that you are continuing to answer the question. Refocus on that, look again at the question, look back at your planning and ensure that you are answering the question. Here are some ideas for you for another paragraph. You hopefully have some of your own. You should now start your second paragraph. You have 5 minutes. You may wish to pause at this point and allow students 5 minutes for their second paragraph. You should now have completed your second paragraph. Remember again to check that you are still answering the question. Look back at your planning. Here are some further suggestions for paragraph 3, which you can use. You should now start your third paragraph. You have 5 minutes. You may wish to pause now to give students 5 minutes to answer complete paragraph 3. You should now have completed paragraph 3 and be ready to start paragraph 4. Again, check you are still answering the question. Look back at your planning. Remember you are writing in point, evidence, explain paragraphs. And you should start your fourth paragraph. You have 5 minutes. Pause if you wish. You should now have completed your fourth paragraph and be ready to start your fifth paragraph. Again, check you are still answering the question. Check you are still writing in point, evidence, explain paragraphs. You should now begin your fifth paragraph. You have 5 minutes. Your aim is to pause now to allow students 5 minutes to complete their fifth paragraph. You can now start your conclusion. So here you should sum up your ideas, and again, most importantly, how far do you agree with the statement? Arthur Burling is an appalling character with no redeeming features. Ensure you are answering that question. You now have a maximum of 5 minutes to write a short conclusion. You may wish to pause now to give students time to do this. Okay, and well done. You should have completed your essay. Now, you're not quite finished yet because you now should have allowed some time, up to 5 minutes. You may have less, but up to 5 minutes to proofread your answer. You've got to remember you can earn an additional 4 marks for this section of the paper for your spelling, your grammar, your punctuation. So it is worth allowing some time to check. Have you answered the question? Have you used clear, point, evidence, explain paragraphs? Do all your sentences make sense? And is your spelling accurate? Especially for those key words, characters, priestly, most importantly. Make sure that you have done that properly. Well done, Year 11. You have completed an Inspector Calls Walking Talking mock. Fantastic.